Hey everyone, this is Ete with another episode of The Company Next Door. Today with me is my special guest and brother-in-law, so I'll just get that out right at the top so you know. Tim Morris from Park City Tree. Tim, how you doing, man?
Doing fantastic.
Awesome. Thanks for taking some time and coming and talking. I had to beg him to come down.
Thanks for inviting me. Yeah.
So Tim, as I've mentioned, he's my brother-in-law. He's got a really cool story which involves country music and Nashville and California and roofs and now trees in Park City and a lot more in between. And so hopefully today we can capture some of that and tell a little bit about your story and talk about Park City Tree and some of the things you're doing here in the community in 2020.
Yep, sounds good. I didn't know we were going to go clear back to Nashville and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I didn't give him any prep. I never do. So Tim, take us back. So you grew up in Southern California.
Yes. Well, I was born there and lived there till the 4th grade, and then we moved to Virginia.
Okay.
And that's actually where your wife was born.
Yeah. Love Virginia.
Yeah, so we were there for 3 years, and then we moved back to California, and I went to junior high and first year of high school there, and then we moved to Florida for 2 years.
So back and forth across the country.
So we were back and forth.
And what was the reason for going back and forth?
My father developed top secret weaponry for various contractors. So
Okay.
Boeing, Hughes Aircraft, and Northrop.
Gotcha. So back and forth. And so most of your years, would you say, were in Southern California? Or
Yeah, most of them.
What's home for you when you think of growing up?
Well, when I think of home, of course, because we've always had our house there. So,
Yeah.
or my parents' house there.
Awesome. When you were a kid, were you thinking, did you always want to, so Tim's been in business for over 30 years. He's taking care of himself. He's taking care of a family and other employees. And that's not an easy feat. 30 years is a long time to be in business. You've seen recessions. It's really exciting things. Did you always set out to be an entrepreneur? Did you always set out to get into business? Did you know as a kid?
Well, my grandfather was a builder, and so he was self-employed. So, and him and I were close, and so I looked up to him.
Okay.
And he had done very well for himself, and he was his own boss, and that always appealed to me.
Being your own boss.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so not having someone else have control over your life, basically, or your income.
So when you were a kid, you're looking up to your grandfather, and so that makes sense. Did you work with him on jobs like you said he was a contractor?
Yes.
What was he
Well,
doing?
he developed big housing projects. So he'd develop, like we have Stone Creek being built up here.
Yeah.
Things like that all over Southern California. But I was little, so I wouldn't get to do too much except for clean and dig and do things like that. But it was, and I learned how to cut wood and things like that from him.
That's awesome. So you're with your father or your grandfather, and your dad not so much. He wasn't. He worked for Boeing. He worked with those projects.
Yeah.
So what was your first business? Did you get into business in high school? What were you doing in those years?
My first business was a landscape business.
Oh, okay.
With Adam, my brother.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about that. How old were you? What were you guys doing?
We were 12 years old, and Adam was 14, and we'd gone around to all the neighbors to ask them if we could cut their grass, edge, prune a little bit of their trees, and just basically just take care of their lawns. And so we had probably 20 properties that we would take care of every week.
Did you guys have a truck, or were you just walking down the street, or how were you?
Well, we would push everything to the properties that were close, and then my mom would take us. We'd load everything up, and she'd take us to the other properties, because we literally went around and put door hangers around various neighborhoods throughout Southern California where we lived. So.
And that's how you got all your accounts, just basically direct mail door hangers?
Yes.
Did you write them by hand as a kid, or did you?
No. Well, we probably did write them by hand at that time. I can't remember. It's been so long ago, but that's how. And then they would tell their friends and neighbors, and so started off doing landscaping.
That's funny. And were there any lessons you learned at that time, or was it just like, wow, this is great, I can go out, have control over my schedule, have control over my income? Or was there anything else that appealed to you about entrepreneurship at that time as a kid?
Well, at that time, obviously you're a kid, so you just are excited to be making money for doing work, because at home you're working, doing chores for your parents, and you're not making anything. So, so that was exciting. We enjoyed, that portion of it, but also each individual that you worked for had different personalities.
Yeah. And
so you'd find out real quick what they liked and what they wanted, and then you aim to please.
Yeah.
That's that I've always been that way. I always wanted to do a job that I would want to have done, for me if someone was working for me, and also to treat other people the way that I would want to be treated.
Gotcha.
So be fair and honest, and it, it's worked out.
Yeah. No, and it's funny because those basic principles you're talking about when you were a kid, mowing lawns and cutting shrubs, but really just listening to the client and saying what is it uniquely that they need. They still apply. That is the core of business.
Right.
So you had it figured out as a young kid. So so you're going through that. How long did you run that little landscape business?
We did that until we left for Florida.
Okay.
And then gave that up. And actually, before that, Adam and I actually, when we lived in Virginia, we had a paper route.
Oh, there you go.
And so we made money doing that. But
did you have one of those bikes with the pegs and one guy stand on it, or who did what?
We actually had this huge apartment complex, and so he would take half. It was kind of like split in half, and so we were on our bikes and we would go. But yeah, so that was the very first thing. But we actually worked for somebody at that point. We worked for, I think it was a newspaper out of Newport News,
gotcha,
Virginia. So it wasn't like being self-employed, but that was really my first job. But first self-employment was that. Then we moved to Florida, and there was we had friends that did various companies and owned different companies, and so I actually went to work at a fish house.
Oh, what does that entail?
Well, those huge fishing boats, they have various needs, and one of them is they have to be filled with ice before they go out to fish.
Gotcha.
Right? So when they catch the fish, they throw them on ice. So one of the things that we did, there was this huge room that had a skid steer bobcat in there.
Sure.
And it would there was an ice machine that would just dump piles of ice. So there'd be this huge pile of ice that would be 30 feet tall. And in the floor was an auger, and we would have to make sure that auger stayed full when they were filling the boats up. Because there was a tube about this big, had a handle on it, and a little baffle so that the ice couldn't just shoot right out. It'd kind of slow the ice down.
Gotcha.
And they would take it and put it above their big coolers and fill them full of ice, and that thing would...
That's crazy.
So I did that most of the time that we were in Florida. I worked there, and I also worked for a place called Jack's.
Jack's?
Burger, not Jack in the Box, but it's called Jack's.
Oh, you worked fast food.
Yeah.
I never heard that. This is new.
And I hated it every second of it. So.
That's awesome.
But it was money. It was a job.
Yeah, for sure. So what was it like growing up in Southern California, Orange County area as a kid? I mean, as a kid for me back east, you always had these dreams of California and the sun and the beach, and you thought, wow, that would be the best place ever to grow up. Mm-hmm. What was it like? I mean, it wasn't as crowded as it is now, right?
Yeah, it's a completely different place now. It was a great place to grow up. It wasn't crowded. Matter of fact, 10 minutes from my parents' house was almost like you were in the country.
Wow.
And so now, if you drive from their house, you can drive for 2 hours, and you're still in a major metropolitan area with houses everywhere. So it was wonderful. It was great. It was great to go to the beach, but you're spoiled whenever you live there.
Yeah.
There's no humidity. We had no bugs. Although we would go to Mississippi every year to visit my grandparents or my grandmother that lived back there, and it's a completely different world, from Southern California. But hard workers in the South as well, and so I had a lot of uncles and aunts, and they taught us along with my parents, how to work hard. So we actually spent a lot of time in the South in the summer repairing my grandmother's house because she was old and she had rheumatoid arthritis really bad, so she couldn't take care of her house. So we would wind up spending almost our whole vacation repairing her house.
Doesn't sound too much like a vacation, but
yeah, one year we put a roof on her house.
Yeah, I've been to Mississippi in the summer. It's not, you don't want to be outside working.
Yeah, you've been to that house.
Yeah, I've been to the house.
You've worked on that house.
I've worked on the house, yeah.
It still needed repair after all these years.
It sounds like, though, your parents taught you how to work. It sounds like they provided,
yes,
whether you want it or not, a lot of opportunities to work hard, and that's been a core part of who you become today.
Yes, yep, definitely taught us how to work hard. You know, we didn't have a lot. We had enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was really no extra, but there was enough, and we never wanted for anything.
That's awesome.
You know?
So you're working side jobs, you go back to Virginia, back to California, you know, you got the lawn mowing, you do some paper route, the fish job. So then did you go to college in California, or what did you do around those years?
Well, after high school, I went on a mission to Michigan. And then whenever I came home, I was getting ready to go to college and enrolled in college and actually started going, but at the same time started a roofing company.
Okay, so why roofing? You had no, I mean, other than your grandfather being a contractor, why'd you come up with the idea for roofing?
My grandfather did us a huge favor, and when he built all those housing tracts, and the majority of the contractors back then, they installed shake roofs, wood shake roofs on those houses. So right around that time in '89 was whenever all of those roofs had gotten to the point where they're going to need to be replaced.
Okay.
And you're talking hundreds of thousands of homes all over Southern California. So so I thought, well, I've learned some construction. I got a license to become a roofing contractor, and actually worked under Grandpa's license for a while.
Wow.
And then got my own later on. But so yeah, it was timing. It was perfect timing to get into that.
So let me ask you this. So you said you were applying for school at the same time you're starting this roofing company. Were you going around and saying, wow, these shake roofs are starting to go, it's time, ooh, maybe I should be the one to replace them? Or how did you get that initial idea? Did your grandpa say, hey, these roofs need to be repaired, Tim, you ought to do it?
Yeah, well, it was my parents, for one. They saw that they were all starting to go bad. And so they said, hey, you may want to look into that as well as going to school. So looked into it, and one of the things that I remember as a kid when my grandfather was building, the construction industry would have ups and downs, be a roller coaster. Sometimes it's fantastic, sometimes it's terrible. Right? The roofing contractors always seem to be busy, and so I thought that is kind of a recession-proof business because you always need
roofs,
a roof,
or repairs.
Right? It's not either you repair them or you replace them,
that
right?
Makes sense.
Or you put a tarp over it, and most places aren't going to allow you to do that for very long. So so I started that, and it took off pretty fast. And so I was looking at friends that were going to college, and the median income I think coming out of college at that time was like $28,000.
Wow.
And I was making about 10 times more
Yeah.
than that already with my own business. So I'm like, why would I?
Yeah, why would you go to college?
Right. Why would I go? And my best friend from kindergarten until now, we're still best friends. He had started a painting company.
Okay.
And he was become amazingly successful, and he hadn't spent even one day in college. And so we kind of, in the beginning, were not so much competing because we didn't do the same type of business, but just to see, who could outdo each other. And he blew me away.
Yeah, he did. I know you're talking about. He blew us all away combined.
Yeah, he blew basically the majority of the country away.
Yeah. That's awesome. So was that when you started the business, you saw the need, and your parents, which, wow, it's amazing that they saw the need. They encouraged you to do it. which I find interesting because they themselves at the time were not entrepreneurs.
Right.
So, I would have thought they would encourage you to continue to go to school. But anyway, and then you start having success. How quick was it? Like, are we talking a year later, you're making great money? Was it months? And was that an exciting time for you?
Yeah, it went pretty quick to where we started getting complaints from the neighbors because now we started having all these work trucks parked on our street. And then we'd park them around the corner, and because we just kept expanding. So eventually we'd start having code enforcement come and tell us we can't park our vehicles there. So we looked into renting a building to run everything out of. So we did that, which looking back was a huge mistake. We should have bought something.
Oh, for the real estate?
Mm-hmm. Because...
But was California the price it is today at that time?
No, it wasn't.
So if you had bought then, you'd be done. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we were paying like $4,000 a month rent back then.
Wow. And this is a big warehouse?
Yeah, it was 5,000 square foot with offices. And so we had 2 secretaries and then, a bunch of crews that worked for us. We had crew superintendents that would run all the crews as well, and each superintendent was running 6 crews. And
wow! So you were starting to get big.
Yeah, we were doing, between 7 and 10 roofs a week.
Wow!
So
what was that? I mean, you went from nothing and just an idea to now you've got warehouses, you've got secretaries and crews, and it sounds a little complicated and exhausting, but it also sounds exciting. What was that experience to have that size scale of business? What was that like? And would you recommend it?
Well, it's a lot of stress, right? And I tell everyone that I got an MBA from the School of Hard Knocks because I didn't go to Harvard and get an MBA or Carnegie Mellon like some of my friends, but so you're basically learning on the job how to run a successful company.
Right, because you had no business experience.
Right.
You didn't go to school for business. You had a little bit.
Right.
So you had to learn everything. I mean, you had to learn how to do taxes. You had to learn how to payroll, all these things.
Yes. Yeah. So, and that was, there's bumps along the way because we originally had an accountant that was a family friend. Yeah. Super nice guy. But we were paying a fortune in taxes.
That'll get you.
And we literally would have a guy from the IRS show up to our facility once a week or once a month asking for a check. And after a while, I was talking to our secretary. She said, well, where I used to work, they use this accountant. You might want to give him a call. So I called him, and he goes, the next time he comes to your office, you hand him my card, and you tell him to give me a call.
Okay.
And he goes, and you don't give him another dime.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah. And so he showed up. I handed him the card. I never saw or heard from him ever again.
So have a good CPA, good accountant. You recommend that?
Yep. So have a good accountant. And then one of the things that I recommend is always sign your own checks.
Okay.
Don't ever let someone else
So a secretary or
right.
Okay, gotcha.
Because we had a secretary embezzle about $30,000 from us, so that's another lesson that you learn. And so and basically what at that point is the checkbook is never anywhere where anyone has access to it.
Gotcha.
But me.
Gotcha.
So that because she'd actually taken checks and signed my name to them.
Wow.
And then because she controlled everything that came in and out, it took us a while. And even my buddy that, my best friend, he's had one take him for about $150,000.
Wow. Yeah, it's common. So this is where the story takes a really interesting turn to me. So the business is growing. You've gotten, in a sense, it sounds like what most entrepreneurs want is the dream. You're there.
Right.
Now I know that you leave it. The business continues and you pursue a career, or I don't want to say pursue a career, but you take time out to move to Nashville and perform.
Right.
And sing for people.
Right. Yeah, that was...
Tell us a little bit about it. How did that happen?
That's a whole nother direction. But I had, at church they have road shows and things like that. So they'd asked me to perform in a road show. and to sing Elvis and be Elvis in this roadshow.
Okay.
So that was early on. I was probably 22 or somewhere around there. And I could sing just like him. And it would be, and so anyway, long story short, after that, we did parades, that we put a float in.
And you're on the float doing Elvis.
I'm on the float singing up.
That's awesome.
And they'd have to put a sign up that would say, he is not lip syncing. This is a live performer. And so that led to people saying, well, hey, I know this voice coach. So I went and met a voice coach, and she professionally trained me how to sing.
Okay.
And she was actually preparing me to go to Las Vegas because her friend owned Legends in Concert.
Gotcha.
Which was, a big show in Las Vegas. And so I worked with her for a couple of years, and then I went to Vegas and performed on the Legends in Concert stage. And
awesome.
It was an amazing experience. It was really fun. And the money to do that at that time was amazing.
Oh, yeah.
It was...
people travel from around the world to see the show.
Yes,
in Vegas.
exactly.
Yeah, so it's a big show.
So I think at that time, the Elvis was making about $500,000 a year, and this was early 90s. And they had also cruise ships that they would send casts out on to performing in any way. So I went and did that, and I was they liked me, and they were interested in having me come to work for them, right, to sing Elvis. But it was the strangest experience I've ever been to in my life. Just because the individuals that are there are, some of them, I almost felt like they were that individual.
Yeah,
and
for sure. Yeah.
So backstage with them, and it was just very odd. And I thought, if I'm ever going to do anything in music, it's not going to be.
It's not going to be this.
Right. It's not going to be mimicking somebody else.
Yeah.
It's going to be doing my own thing. So transition now to where the company is successful and we're making a lot of money.
Yeah.
All these pieces fell into place for me to go to Nashville.
Yeah, because you'd have to sustain yourself.
Right.
The company. So yeah, there would have to be a lot of things in play for that to happen.
And so, I'm a firm believer the Lord has a plan for each one of us in, what direction we're going to go in our life. So I was, my mother was talking to my uncle. It was my great uncle. It was her uncle. And she was telling him I sang and everything else. Yeah. And he says, well, you need to have him contact my buddy John Hobbs in Nashville.
Okay.
Because he owns the Nashville Palace, and he got Randy Travis started. He got Alan Jackson, Ricky Van Shelton, all these.
That's a big connection.
People. So he gave her his name and phone number, and my mom called him up and said, hey. So,
I never heard that.
Yeah, so next thing, we're flying to Nashville, and I'm singing at the Nashville Palace.
Man.
And John, who, I didn't know John from Adam, but getting to know him, he's quite the character, and he's had his hands in a lot of things. He's not only in politics, but he was on the board of directors for the Academy of Country Music.
Gotcha.
And so that set in play a whole different set of doors that opened. It was, he told me, he goes, you've got what it takes, but now it's time for you to work to get it, because you're going to have to knock on a lot of doors. And so, perfect. I was perfectly willing to do that. Went back to California because I was still working in the roofing company. And he calls me up one day and he says, hey, the president of the Academy of Country Music, her husband had just passed away, and they had some roofing needs.
Oh, and that's perfect.
Isn't
you can do roof and sing at the same time.
Right. So I go, and we help her out because there's a lot of shady people. She's a widow trying to take advantage.
Yeah.
And so we gave her a fantastic deal, on getting her roof done. And then she said, well, John says that you're a singer. And she goes, is there any doors that I can open for you? And so
come on, man, that's amazing.
So the next thing I know, I'm at events with Dick Clark, and I meet Dick Clark and his wife Terry and all that whole organization. And actually, before I moved to Nashville, I had a letter of recommendation from Dick Clark, Dick Clark Productions, which opened up
that's a lot of value there.
A lot of doors in Nashville. So I packed my bags and moved to Nashville. My brother, who was my business partner in the roofing, I told him, good luck. I'm the contractor.
Yeah.
I had the license, but I said, I'll still be involved, but you just run the day to day.
Sure.
And so I took off there in 1999.
Wow. And you spent, about 6 to 8 years there?
Yeah, I met my wife, the girl that's now my wife, in 2006.
Okay.
We got married in 2007.
Okay.
And at that point, I decided that I needed to be more responsible than just trying to make it in country music. And so I went back to the company in California.
Gotcha.
And
was that a hard decision? I mean, here you are, and I know for the sake of time, you're not going to go into all the details of, but I've heard many of it, and impressive. I mean, you've gotten to sit down with heads of record labels. You've had so many great opportunities, which, I'm a musician too, so that's a dream. That sounds amazing, but you're faced with this, you meet this woman, Hannah, who's amazing, and you decide, this is what I want to do. I want to have a family. I want to settle down, essentially.
Right.
Was that a hard decision, or was it just like, this is what I'm doing?
Well, the music business is iffy, for one.
Yeah.
Right? I went to Garth Brooks' 100 million album sold party by invitation from him and Capitol Records, and Garth told me to my face, he said, the day before I signed my record deal with Capitol Records, that MCA told me, basically, you suck and you're not going to make it.
Wow.
And here he is there, right? And so time after time...
Just shut, rejected. And...
time after time you hear of these incredibly talented artists being told that they weren't any good. Alan Jackson, one of them. Everybody kind of goes through that. And I had the chance. I've met with the president of Capitol Records probably 6 or 7 times, who's now the president of MCA.
Gotcha.
In Nashville. And he's music. Universal Music Group in Nashville right now, and we're still friends. And I met with the Dixie Chicks producers. Really every major record label in town. I got to meet with them and play my music for them multiple times, which is, it's
a dream.
It's a difficult task to be able to even get your stuff in for them to listen to it.
Sure. Oh yeah.
And then for them to ask you back and tell you that you like them. I had one producer that was basically the top producer in Nashville agree to produce my music until an issue between him and my manager blew that up.
Gotcha.
But looking back, I look at it, everything was a stepping stone to get me to where I was supposed to be.
Yeah. Which was to meet your wife.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And so after I met her, we got married, moved to California. I still hadn't completely given up, but I knew that financial security was there.
Number one, yeah.
Was in California with the company, and the company had significantly declined.
Okay.
It was actually $30,000 in debt whenever I came back. And so it took about 2 years to turn that ship around to where it was making a lot of money again. And in between that time, I'd gotten a call from Capitol and asking me if I had any more music to play for them. And so I told him I did, and so we flew out there, and I was telling Mike Dungan is his name. I said, this is it. If you don't sign me after this meeting,
I'm done.
I'm done. I'm not coming back here. I'm not dealing with it anymore. And so we had kind of parlayed that trip into one to Florida. So after that meeting, I went down to Florida to the beach house with Hannah and her parents. And I had this email that would come over from Nashville that would give me all like the updates of what was happening in the music industry. And it said basically that Capitol Records had just gotten rid of their A&R, all their A&R people, just complete shakeup. The only person that stayed was Mike, the guy that I met with. And I knew when I got that email that they weren't signing anybody.
Gotcha.
At that point, because they were reworking everything. And so I'm like, I'm not going to get signed. So
at that point, it just seems like you said, doors open and then they close.
Right.
And it seems like at that point you knew what you were supposed to do next. And that was go back to California, build the company back up, get married, have children, that type of thing.
Right.
Which you did. And the company's still there today.
Yeah, we're still.
And they're doing fantastic from what I hear.
Yeah, we're doing well down there.
So you got that company there, that's just a cool story. And then now, here you are in Heber. You've been here for, I don't know how many years. 5, 6 years? 4 or 5 years? Something like that?
2016. So this is our 5th year, I guess, would be.
So you went from, successful roofing company to spraying and maintaining trees in Park City.
Right.
So a little bit of a jump there.
Yeah.
I mean, service industry.
Right.
So, managing crews and scheduling work, same type of thing.
Right.
But different product.
Right.
Different thing. Was that hard to shift for you? Was that
No, it was one of the easiest things because, of course, having done landscaping early on.
Yeah.
And just loving being outside.
Yeah.
Right.
And in Heber.
Right.
Park City. Yeah, it's not.
And having a good friend that's a landscaper that plants trees and things like that down in Southern California as well, that, I was always intrigued with what he did. They would put in pools and landscape, and he had his own nursery, so that was always a lot of fun. And so when the opportunity came to partner with an individual up here with Park City Tree and pursue becoming an arborist full-time, that was exciting for me.
And it was something new.
Yeah, it was something new, something different, something that I felt would be good for the family.
Yeah.
Because, my wife being from the South, she wasn't excited about living in the confines of Orange County, even though, we had a wonderful place, new house we just built for ourselves and up on a hill, beautiful view. But
so you find this, and here you are. You partner with a guy here in Park City Tree, and you just finished building a house in California.
Right.
So you sell the house, and you just pack up and you move up.
Yep, we sold it and moved up. To me, it was. You always rely on a higher power to send you wherever you're going to go. All the pieces fell into place, and. Whenever you get that confirmation that's what you're supposed to do, then that's exactly what you do. So we did it, and it's been amazing.
How is the Heber Valley, Park City, but specifically Heber Valley? How's that treated you? How's that been for your family?
Oh, it's been phenomenal because, as you know, Hannah worked for a huge pharmaceutical company as a salesperson, and she's very loyal. And they had been so good to her, it was very difficult for her to leave that job. Yeah. And so this was, I think, really the only way to get her out of that situation.
So she could stop working?
Yeah,
stay
so
home
she could
full-time?
stop because literally the week before we moved up here, AstraZeneca offered her the biggest raise they could possibly give her.
To keep her.
Yeah. And so it was...
That doesn't make it easy to leave.
No. But Hannah's never really been driven by money.
No.
And so so I told her, I said, listen, I looked on their website. There's no job openings in Utah. So just tell them that you want to transfer to Utah, and then they'll tell you there's no job openings, and then you'll be fine. Right, so it looks like you still want to stay loyal to the company, which they were good to her. So long story short on that, she tells them, and then she gets because she was so successful as a salesperson there in Delaware, the head of AstraZeneca sales sends her a text, says, I am going to make a position for you in Utah.
That's awesome.
So anyway, she's like, now look what you did, I'm like, listen, I said, everything requires travel in
Yeah.
Utah. So if you just say, I'm not going to travel more than 15 miles away from my house, and it'll be impossible for them to find you a spot. So anyway, that all worked out. She didn't wind up having the pressure from that. And then that just gave her a chance to stay at home and be with the kids full time, which we spent a lot of time with them. We had a nanny in California.
Yeah.
But I would take the kids to work with me because I'm the boss. So
Yeah.
at that time we had twins that were, 4 and a new baby.
Yeah.
So I'd run them to work with me. But anyway, now she gets to homeschool the kids, and we get to travel.
That's awesome. So Park City Tree, and many of you know Park City Tree. It's been around for, I'm not sure, maybe 10 years, 15. I'm not actually sure the date, but it's been a very reliable company. I mean, and many of you know I have a company, Ecolon, here in town, and we refer back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And Park City Tree has just done a very good job of doing what they say they're going to do.
Yeah.
And
as with Ecolon,
Yeah.
Doing quality work for a great price.
Yeah, and that's all we can.
And honest.
Yeah, and that's all we can offer. And so after that, so you got the business, and you still have some ownership in California business?
Yes.
Okay, so you got some ownership there, so that's great, creating revenue. You got Park City Tree, and it's grown in the last 4 years. I mean, I've seen trucks everywhere. It just seems like it's grown really well.
Yeah, it has expanded significantly since I bought out my partner and took it over.
That's awesome. So what is we'll talk about Park City Tree, but anywhere, what is one of the best lessons that you've learned along the way for any of these entrepreneurs or people that want to get in the business? And you've shared some already. You've shared hard work, but what's a lesson you've learned that if you had one thing that you could share with someone going into business?
Well, first of all, figure out what you're going to do. And that you can be passionate about it.
Okay.
Right? I am passionate about trees.
Yeah, which is cool.
I love that portion of it. The roofing was not my passion.
Yeah.
Right. So even though I wanted to make sure we always did a fantastic job and made our customers extremely happy, because we are the highest rated roofing contractor in Southern California on Home Advisor, which is a huge company.
It's a big deal.
And that takes a lot of effort to make sure that you serve your clients the way that they want to be served. This company, I love doing it. I love being an arborist, and so it's not like work to me.
What do you love about it? I mean, it's just trees. Come on.
Right, but
it's not just trees,
right.
obviously.
Well, for one, most people probably don't know that just one full-grown tree on your property will provide enough oxygen for a family of 4 for a year, right?
It's a big deal.
So, trees have different DNA just like we do. So each tree is a little bit different. So some trees, they'll be super strong and healthy, and some will constantly have disease or insect issues because they're a weak tree. And so there's certain things that we can do to help that, and it's fun. I mean, it's amazing for me to get to a property and see a tree that is in complete decline, and really, without assistance, is not going to survive another season, right? And to go in and do the things necessary to bring that tree back to life
and see a result,
right?
And the homeowner's just ecstatic,
exactly, and because some of these trees are just extremely sentimental to people.
Sure.
And they want to, somebody planted them that may no longer be alive, or that they planted that after someone died as a memorial tree.
Right.
And so to be able to go in and to just change the outcome of where trees provide a lot of property value as well.
Oh, yeah.
So just like landscape, if you pull up and it's a lawn's full of weeds and spotted with fungus.
Keep driving.
Yeah, exactly. That's not a pretty sight to see. So I do enjoy that portion of it. So it's not like work.
Yeah. And you're right. Trees are exciting. I mean, you're dealing with microbiology. You're dealing with living organisms. I mean, and challenging.
Mm-hmm.
You can't always control sometimes there's things that pop up that you just like, wow, this is new.
Right, exactly. One of the things that I can't control is how much water they get.
Yeah.
Right. So that's an issue. Trees need water, and we have a lot of irrigation systems that are hidden. So if those aren't being checked on a regular basis, a tree can go a season without water, and it doesn't matter how much we fertilize or treat them for bugs, they're not going to survive without water.
So can you give us one tip for anyone out watching going, oh, I need a tree doctor? What's something you could teach us about trees, maybe about watering or feeding, or what's one thing that could be helpful?
One of the most important things, trees that are in landscape, that are watered in landscape, the soil will compact over time. Okay, so just like you aerate your grass, you need to aerate around your trees. Not every year, but about every 5 years, get in there and churn that soil up. Because otherwise it compacts, and it compacts so tight that it will suffocate the tree.
Gotcha.
So that root ball needs oxygen. If it can't get it, it will die. And so you need to do that. One of the other things that helps is to just put a small layer of mulch there, so that because what happens here is we have dry, arid climate, right?
Yeah.
So if you're watering it, what do excavators do to compact the soil when they come in? They water it, right? So they come in, they excavate something, they water it, and then the water dries and it gets really hard, like a dirt clod, right? And then they'll add some more soil and water that until they compact. So that's what you're doing with irrigation. You're compacting. So if you put a little small layer of mulch in there, it won't let the water, especially from like a rotator spray on it, and keep compacting it. Because once it's compacted, it root suffocates them. It keeps them from getting access to the nutrients that may be in the soil because it's so tight.
That makes sense.
And so you get in there, and there's products now that you can put into the soil too that will aerate the soil.
Yeah.
So that's been exciting to see the change with that, because we've been using that. There's but that would be the one thing that I would check. Besides, Park City landscapers have a tendency to plant trees too deep. So planting trees too deep will do the same thing that soil compaction will do. They'll root suffocate.
So it's buried too deep in the ground?
Yes.
So so what you're saying is, like, if this is the earth, they're putting the root ball too low, it should be higher?
Exactly.
Okay.
There should be no more than 2 inches of soil over top of the root ball ever, or the root crown.
Gotcha.
So if you pile it up, you root suffocate it. And that will take, you'll start to see a decline in 3 to 4 years.
Okay.
And then once they decline, trees, unless you have our help, decline slow and they rebound slow.
Yeah.
But we've developed some ways to go in and help them rebound quicker, which is amazing, because normally it would take, if we went in and did some amendments, you wouldn't see it till next year.
Gotcha.
And now I've already seen stuff that we've done this spring.
That's already coming back?
Already changed. Completely awesome. Change of color, which is
nothing
short of a miracle.
That's exciting. So if you guys are looking for tree care, Tim will have his link below in the website, the Park City Trees website. And they are taking on new clients.
Yes.
And so he's got a good team, great staff, and they can help you out. I have a couple last questions in winding down. One is, and let's see if you want to talk about it or graze over it. Okay. Can we talk a little bit about, in a protective way, about what you're potentially working with, or do you want to keep that off the table?
Oh,
the newest. Back to your business side. So I mentioned Tim's an entrepreneur. He's always looking for ideas. You have a new project, but I don't know if it's something that we can talk a little bit about.
It's
it's fascinating. That's why I want to bring it up.
Well, it's you come across a lot of amazing people.
Yeah.
Especially here in the Heber Valley.
Yeah.
And I'm always looking for something else to do, not to take the place of being an arborist, because I love it. But this is I had the opportunity to be part of a company that makes nuclear isotopes for cancer patients.
That's awesome.
And so I talked to them right before I came in, and we have a cyclotron that makes these isotopes. It's currently on a ship coming from Belgium
Okay.
to the United States, and it'll wind up at a facility that we're building in Indiana right now.
And this cyclotron, I mean, and most of you don't know what that is because I had to Google it. We're talking, this is like a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment.
Yeah, it's millions and millions of dollars, and it has it's 140,000 tons. So and it has to be in this concrete structure because of
The weather?
No, because of the nuclear.
Yeah.
Portion of it, but and I was just asked a couple of weeks ago to be on the board of directors.
That's cool.
For that company. So that was and I know the group of people that are putting it together, but we will have a cyclotron that puts out the most purest isotopes in the world.
That's awesome. Yeah, I had to bring that up because it's just so bizarre and interesting.
Yeah, it's
how do you get wrapped up in something,
music to
it's just all
roofing
over the place.
to landscape. It's crazy.
And I'm sure we'll hear more about that as it comes out over the next bit. What's one of the hardest moments that you've had? This is kind of my winding down. Just in business where you're just like, I mean, you've been doing it 31 years, so that's incredible and just something to celebrate, really.
Right.
And you've stayed afloat, but what's one? Can you look back on was there a moment where you're like, wow, I might just go get a job. I'm done with this.
Well, we were dealing with a supplier out of Orange County for a long time. Trusted the guys that worked there.
Yeah.
And one day I get a call from Phoenix, which was where their headquarters was from, and they said, you've got a $150,000 outstanding balance. And I'm like, no, we don't. We pay our bill every month.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, I'm showing there's a $150,000 balance. And so, I said, well, send it to me. So he sends me a stack of like the first portion of like $25,000. So I go through it and I find all the checks that we used to pay for it. And at this point in time, that was when you fax stuff.
Yeah.
So I faxed him all. Said, nope, you're wrong. These are all paid. A little while later, I get a whole nother stack of stuff. These aren't paid.
Oh,
so
man.
Now I'm going through hours and hours, really weeks, trying to find which check's paid for what. And I keep faxing them back. And one day we get a knock at the door and we get served with a lawsuit for $150,000, and it's a stack of all these invoices that I had already sent him the checks that we paid for.
Yeah.
Right. So now you're having to fight a huge Goliath company, and it's costing you tens of thousands of dollars for stuff that you already paid for. Right.
That's crazy.
And long story short, they found out years later, that they had someone in their office that was embezzling money, and what they were doing was pushing it off to several different big contractors.
Gotcha.
And so, but in the meantime, our lawyer came in and said, listen, how much it's going to cost you $150,000 to fight this. So he goes, what I would do, I would just take this company that they're suing and just bankrupt it and open up another one.
Just start over. Yeah.
And so I didn't want to do it. I didn't think that was right, but we did it, and then later, we never got the apology, and I guess we could have gone back and sued them for malicious prosecution. But in the end, there's only one group of people that win that, and that's the lawyers.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that sounds like weeks and months of stress, and then to have to shut down the business and rebuild, that does sound like a trying time.
Yeah.
But you did it.
Yeah, it wasn't easy. And the hardest part too is you have people that that you did work for, that are your friends, and they're like, hey, you didn't pay my bill. And you're like, yes, we did. And we'd have to send our close friends copies of checks that paid their bill 2 years before.
Oh, boy.
So that was stressful, but then we learned a whole different way of paying those for those. So now instead of just send a check, we would send a check along with they had to send us a lien release for for every check that we sent them,
Wow.
right? So that they would acknowledge that they got paid on that. And then eventually we got to the point where we had so much capital that we bought the material before it ever left
Awesome.
the wholesaler.
Awesome.
So, which kept us out of that. But it's,
Yeah.
you live and you learn,
Well, you do. As long as you learn, it's worth it.
right?
So my final question for you is, what do you do for fun? I mean, I always say it's a Saturday in July. You don't have to work. You know, the trees are under control. The roofing's under control. The isotopes are under control. Where are we going to find you?
Well, you're either going to find us, well, we're always, as a family, we do, I have kids that are twins that are 8, that'll be 9 here in a few weeks, and a 5-year-old. So I love being a dad. That's one of the most amazing things
Yeah, it is.
to be. So anything with them, with family, so if we go, we just got back from Florida, we're at the beach, or we'll take out the Jeep, or we'll take the Razor out and play in the mountains, or we'll float down the canal, or we'll be with you guys out at the lake, kayaking, and, so just anything that we can do as a family that not only is fun, but then at the same time, a little bit of educational as well.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome, man. Well, there you go, guys. This is Tim Morris with Park City Tree and Morris Roofing, and, all these companies. But I love the idea that he's just kind of always looking. He's kind of open to, are there other things that could be interesting? And I love that he's excited about trees. Here's a newer field to him in the last decade, and he's found a passion, and he's sharing. If you find something you're excited about, it doesn't really feel like work.
Right,
It's
exactly.
enjoyable. Awesome. Well, Tim, we'll put a link to Park City Tree, because that's the Heber company. That's what we're talking about, in the notes below. And thank you so much for taking some time and coming to chat with me.
Thanks for having me. It's been fabulous.
And that's a wrap.